Good morning, friends. In today's class, we'll start discussing about the stages in conflict process. In the previous classes, in managing change in organization, we have studied what is conflict, what are the various sources of conflict. We have also studied what are the various types of conflict, how the conflict occurs at individual level, group level, and an organizational level. We have tried to understand what are the types of conflict, what is functional conflict, how it is beneficial for the organization, and how what is dysfunctional conflict and how it hinders the organizational performance. In today's class, we'll try to understand what is conflict, what are the stages in conflict process. We'll start. First, let us understand what is a conflict. Conflict is refers to the struggle between incompatible or opposing needs, wishes, ideas, interests, and people. If two people are having different needs, different wishes, different ideas, different interests, or the behavior or the personality of the people are not compatible or opposing to each other, obviously it will lead to conflict in an organization. First, we have to understand what is conflicts, then we will understand what are the stages in a conflict process. Now, let us understand what are the various stages in conflict process. In the below diagram, you can see that there are five major stages of conflict process. What are the stages? Stage one is potential opposition or incompatibility. Stage two is cognition and personalization. Stage three is intentions. Stage four is behavior. And stage five is outcomes. What happens in stage one? Here there is potential opposition or incompatibility. There are the conditions, antecedent conditions like communication, structure, personal variables. These antecedent conditions, these pre-existing conditions causes conflict, lead to conflict. So here we have to understand these antecedent conditions if we want to understand how the conflict starts. In this stage, the conflict is in a latent stage. Second, what happens in stage two? There is cognition and personalization of conflict. In the stage two, one or both the parties take cognizance or perceive that there is a conflict in the organization, a conflict between them. Once they perceive this conflict, they will attach emotional involvement with it and it will lead to felt conflict. Once they lack emotional involvement, it will create anxiety, stress, frustration. All these things will lead to felt conflict. So in stage two, there is cognizance and personalization of the conflict. Stage three, the once they have perceived the conflict, once they have felt the conflict, what happens in stage three? In stage three, they try to get with emotions, the intentions for this conflict handling. They come up with the intentions. There are five intentions in which the conflict can be handled. They understood the conflict is existing. Now they want to handle the conflict. What are the five ways? Competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. These are the ways in which they can handle the conflict. These are the intentions of both the parties. So both the parties try to handle the conflict by following these means. Once the stage three is over, there is stage four. In stage four, it is conflict manifest. What happens here is the conflict is very evident, and the actions, reactions, statements, and behavior of the parties to the conflict is overt. The behavior is overt. Okay, either it may lead to small, minor behaviors, or it may lead to very unmanageable conflict, which lead to annihilatory behavior. Okay, we'll understand while we're discussing the stage four. Last is the stage five. Depending upon the behavior, the action reaction, there are two major outcomes. One is a positive and one is negative. The positive outcome is functional conflict, which will lead to increased group performance, and the negative outcome is dysfunctional conflict, which will lead to decreased group performance. Now we'll understand each of the stages in detail. Now coming to stage one. Stage one is potential opposition or incompatibility. It consists of the conditions that allow a conflict to arise. Okay, and these conditions are antecedent conditions leading to conflict. Means these conditions are pre-existing. If these conditions are pre-existing, then only a conflict will arise. Then only a conflict will surface. So, what are the major issues or the preconditions or the antecedent conditions? There are majorly three. One is uh, communication, second is structure, and third is personal. Third is personal variables. So we'll deal with each of them individually. Here you have to understand that these antecedent conditions do not directly lead to conflict, but one of these conditions is necessary if the conflict is to arise or if the conflict is to surface. The first antecedent condition is communication. The communication may lead to conflict. Why? This is the potential. Communication has the potential to create conflict. It may be either too little communication or too much communication. Both of them will lead to conflict. And there are other things like semantic barriers. Semantic barriers, semantic difficulties means difficulty in explaining a particular goal, or the language used, the images, the jargons used, uh, or the way they are being delivered, the gestures that are being used to take across the communication. These will cause barriers. These are the semantic barriers. This will cause misunderstandings. Both the party will not be able to understand what the other party means. So this will lead to conflict. And also there is noise in the communication channel. While the communication takes place, the barrier or obstacles that happens by or disturbances that happens by the way of noise will also cause conflict. Let us give an example in order to clarify how communication forms a antecedent condition for conflict. Suppose there is a person working and he has a new manager. The new manager is using very large business jargons which are not very understandable by all the people in the group. Is not explaining the goal of the project properly and thus starts to do the project. And all of a sudden, while you are performing in the project, he comes and says that you are not understanding the goal. There is the whatever deliverables are there, whatever things are needed from your side, you are not giving 100%. Then it will lead to conflict because at the first place, the manager has not explained about clearly. There is ambiguity. So the persons working in the project, they don't know what is the goal of the project. There is he has used business jargons which is not understandable by all. So all these semantic barriers has the potential of causing conflict because the person now is irritated because the new manager has not explained the goals properly and not explained the project properly, and now he is trying to point out mistakes. So this will lead to potential conflict. Apart from communication, structure may also lead to conflict. Here structure means the organization structure or the structure of the job. What happens? Structure includes a lot of variables like what? First is the size and specialization of job. Second is jurisdictional clarity or ambiguity. Third is member and goal compatibility. Fourth is the leadership style. Fifth is the reward systems. And sixth is the degree of dependence between groups. Structures. So these problems, these variables in the structure causes conflict. So if we explain few of the concepts, like the size and specialization act as a forces to stimulate conflict. If the size and specialization is very large, there is a greater likelihood that there is a conflict will happen. If the size of the group is very large, that will be very difficult to control and coordinate the group. So this will lead to conflict in the organization. And if the jobs are highly specialized, then it will be very complex. There's a lot of complexity involved in the jobs. And if it's not properly communicated, then obviously there will be conflict. If there is no jurisdictional clarity, then what happens? It leads to intergroup conflict because they will be competing for control, resource, and territory. So this will be one of the major reasons of conflict in an organization. Similarly, if the members' goal and the organization's goal is not compatible enough, then also it will lead to conflict. Similarly, the leadership styles and the reverses. See, the leadership styles means if the particular person's leadership styles is very autocratic in nature, is very narrow or dogmatic in nature, then the other people in the group will not able to accommodate that. So it will lead to conflict. Similarly, if the reward systems are not very fair, then also it will lead to conflict. Finally, the degree of dependence between individuals and groups. The degree of dependence also will lead to conflict. So let us give an example. Suppose you are a person who is involved in car sales, and your co-worker is a person who is a authenticate or will allow the amount of credit that will given to a customer. Suppose you have a customer who is willing to buy the car, but your co-worker does not approve or does not authenticate or does not allow to give credit to that person. Now your co-worker is standing between you and your commission, your growth. So obviously it will create conflict between you and your co-worker. So this is because the degree of dependence is more here. The dependence of one person on another person is more. So this is causing conflict in the one of the causes why the conflict will occur in the organization. Apart from the communication structure, there is personal variables that will also cause conflict. What are the personal variables? It is the personality, emotions, and the values. Okay, what happens if the person's personality, if the person's emotions, if the values of the persons involved in the conflict are not matching, are differing, then it will lead to conflict. For example, individuals who are very highly authoritarian or dogmatic personality, they will not work well with other people. They will be having problems. So this is one of the cases. Similarly, if the emotions of the people are not compatible or opposing, it will lead to conflict. Similarly, the value system of the people are not compatible, it will lead to conflict. Let us give you an example. Like suppose there are two workers. One workers, the way he conducts himself, the way he laughs, the way he talks, the way he comments on everything, you are not very, you find the person is not very trustworthy. Then what happens? This will lead to conflict because that person rubs you in the wrong way, and this personal value variable, okay, will impact you and will cause conflict. So in this way, the personal variables like personality, emotions, and values also causes conflict in organizations. So this is the stage one, where conflict in the stage one of the conflict process. Now we'll read about the stage two of the conflict process, that is cognition and personalization of conflict. When we say cognition and personalization of conflict, this is the stage in the process, it's a place in the process where the parties to the conflict understand what the conflict is about, they perceive the conflict. Before, in stage one, the conflict was in latent stage. They were not aware of the conflict, but here they can perceive the conflict, they can feel the conflict. What happens once the conflict is perceived, then only it can be personalized. This is very essential. Suppose if the one of the both the people of the indulged in conflict, they are not aware of the conflict. Obviously, there will be no conflict because since they are not aware that there is a difficult situation or opposing or incompatible situation between both the parties, there is no conflict. Only when both the parties or one of the parties comes to understand that there is a probable reason, will perceive that there is a conflict between the parties, then only they can perceive the conflict. Once they perceive the conflict, they will personalize the conflict by involving emotions into it. Okay. Accordingly, the conflict will be perceived conflict and felt conflict. Let us explain what is perceived conflict and felt conflict. Perceived conflict means the awareness of one or more parties of the existence of conditions that create opportunities for conflict to arise. Here the parties, one party or both the parties are aware or perceive that there are certain conditions that will create ripe opportunities for conflict to arise. Then it is known as perceived conflict. Here you will understand there are enough reasons, enough grounds, enough conditions, antecedent conditions which will lead to conflict. This is perceived conflict. What happens in felt conflict? It's an escalation, increase in the conflict level by including emotional involvement into it. You attach emotions to it. While you attach emotions to a perceived conflict, what happens? It creates anxiety, it creates tension, it creates frustration, it creates a feeling of hostility. So then the conflict is felt. Okay, so let me give you an example in order to clear your idea about this uh, conflict, cognition and personalization conflict. Suppose person A is having a disagreement with person B. They may perceive, but they may not be personally affected by it. Okay, suppose A and B in a conflict. B understands there's a conflict, perceives it, but does not personalize, but does not personally affect it. Then A is not worried about the disagreement. It is only when both the parties understand the conflict is developing, they internalize it, and they feel that the conflict, the perceived conflict, is affecting them. Then only it will cause conflict. Okay, so we have understood what is perceived conflict and what is felt conflict. Here it is very important to understand positive emotions are very helpful here because this will help in solving the conflict, whereas negative emotions will enhance the conflict. So when you are personalizing the conflict, if you are involving positive emotions, then the conflict will not be happening. But if you involve negative emotions, it will escalate, enhance the conflict. But here the resolution, in this stage, the resolution is more likely to have good results. Okay, this is the stage 2 of the conflict process, that is cognition and personalization. The stage 3 is the intentions of the parties in the conflict. What are the intents? Intentions refers to decisions to act in a given way. In what way do you want to act? The decisions. That is very important. Okay. These intentions intervene between people's perception and emotions. It will intervene between your perception and the emotion, and it will force you to indulge in an overt behavior. Overt means explicit behavior. And these intentions will create a conflict or intensify a conflict. So, what are the intentions? These intentions may be good or bad. If the intentions are good, the conflict will be over, but the intentions are bad, then the conflict will continue. But here we are generally doing the conflict handling intentions. Okay, the decisions we make to act in a certain way. So, in order to handle the conflict, we don't want the conflict to escalate, we want to handle the conflict. Then only it can be done by keeping two things in one. One thing is cooperativeness and another thing is assertiveness. Then only we can handle a conflict. So we can create a diagram where on one side we have cooperativeness and we have assertiveness, and then we can come up with 5 conflict handling intentions. So but first we have to understand what is cooperativeness and what is assertiveness. When we say cooperativeness means the degree to which one party attempts to satisfy the other party's concerns. One party is interested that the other party is concerned, other party's interests are fulfilled. That is cooperativeness. And assertiveness refers to the degree to which one party attempts to satisfy his or her own concerns or interests. He is not concerned about the other person's interest. He is concerned about his own interest and concerns. This is assertiveness. Okay, if we put in cooperativeness in one axis and assertiveness in another axis, then we can come up with the following diagram. The diagram you can see in one side there is cooperativeness and the other side there is assertiveness. In accordingly, we have come up with 5 conflict handling situations or conflict handling intentions. That is competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. We'll discuss each of them. Now let us discuss competing. When we say competing means a desire to satisfy one's interest regardless on the impact of the impact on the other party. You are concerned with satisfying only your interest, your agenda, okay, your goals. You are not interested on what the other party requires, other party's interest, agenda. You are only interested in satisfying your own interests. It includes the desire to achieve one's goal at the cost or expense of the other's goals. You want to achieve your goal at the cost of the other person's goal. This is known as competing. Okay. Now the second conflict handling style is collaborating. Here the parties to a conflict each desire to satisfy fully the concern of all parties. Here both the parties want to satisfy each other's desire fully. Then it will be known as collaborating. It includes attempting to find a win-win situation, that allows both parties' goals to be achieved in such a way that both the parties' goals are achieved. They find a common solution, which is a win for both the parties. It's a win-win solution in collaborating. This is one way of handling the conflict. The third way of handling the conflict is avoiding. What you want to avoid the conflict. The desire to withdraw or suppress a conflict. You don't want to indulge in conflict. You want to run away from conflict. You want to withdraw from conflict. You want to suppress the conflict. And it includes trying to ignore the conflict and also avoiding others with whom you have disagreement. Either you avoid the situation of the conflict itself or you avoid the person with whom you are having a conflict. So this is also one of the way where you try to handle the conflict by avoiding the conflict. Now, coming to another way of handling conflict, that is accommodating. Here, what is accommodating? Here, the willingness of one party in a conflict to place the opponent's interest above his or her own interests. So the other party wants to place the opponent's interest, opponent's desires, opponent's goal over his own interest goals. And it includes sacrifice one's own goal to maintain the other party's goal. That means sacrificing your own goals in order to satisfy the goal of the other person. So this is also a way. Accommodating is also a way of handling a conflict situation, and this is one of the intentions of handling conflict. Now, the last way in which the conflict can be handled is that a situation in which each party to a conflict is willing to give up something, resolve the conflict, to resolve the conflict. Both the parties are interested to leave something. It's not one way, it's two way. Both the parties are ready to leave something from their own interest, reduce their interest in order to accommodate the other's interest. So both the parties together are willing to give up something to resolve the conflict. They want that the conflict should be resolved. In compromising, there is no clear winner or loser. Okay, you cannot say he's a winner or he's a loser because both of them are willingly giving up something in order to resolve the conflict. So these are the various conflict handling intentions, okay, that parties to a conflict undergo, and accordingly they will act. Here you have to, very important to understand the intentions provide a general guidelines for parties in a conflict situation. They define each party's purpose, yet these intentions are not fixed. During the course of conflict, during the process of complete course of conflict, they might change, okay, because of reconceptualization or because of emotional reaction to a behavior of the other party. Suppose starting you are very much aggressive and you want assertive and you want that it's a win-lose situation. You want to have a competing situation where you want to have your own satisfaction of your own goals. But while listening to other person, you feel that, okay, no, the other person's goals are also important, so I will compromise, go for compromise in handling such intention. Or you feel that the other persons, and after hearing out the other person, the other conflicting person, then you decide that we will accommodate the other person's interest or goal over your. So initially you may be interested in handling the conflict by undergoing competing intention, but later on you may either go for compromising or accommodating. So the intention will change. Okay, so intention is not fixed. And here we are discussing this intention because intentions are here very important, because intentions will decide how the conflict can be handled. Okay, this is the stage 3 of the conflict process. Now coming to the stage 4, that is behavior. Stage 4, that is behavior. Okay, what behavior is the stage where conflict is very evident. It is the stage where the conflict is manifested. Conflict is very evident, and it includes what? The statements, actions, and reactions of the parties involved in the conflict. It includes the statements, actions, and reactions of the parties in the conflict. Okay, and these conflict behaviors manifest somewhere along the conflict intensity continuum range. We'll discuss that later. Later we'll discuss that. First, we have to understand what is behavior. Behavior includes, in this stage, the conflict is evident, and it is includes the statements, actions, and reactions of the parties involved in the conflict. The conflict behaviors are overt attempts by to implement each other's intentions. There is an interactive stage. Okay, this stage is a very interactive and dynamic stage where both the parties, through their statements, actions, and reactions, come up with overt behavior. Okay, and this overt behavior can be understood by understanding the conflict intensity continuum range. Okay, in the below diagram it is seen, if the statements, actions, reactions causes a behavior which is results in minor disagreement or misunderstanding, then there is no conflict. But if it is at highest level, unmanageable or annihilatory conflict, and one party tries to destroy the other party completely, then it is difficult. So, conflict at the lower part of the continuum is small conflicts, the minor disagreements and misunderstanding. But conflict at the upper part of the continuum are highly destructive. They are completely destructive in nature and will cause problems in this. So we have to understand at what this conflict intensity continuum range the conflict is present. If it is at the minor conflict, then there is no problem. The minor disagreement will happen. Then it little bit escalating, there will be questioning or challenging the other party. A little bit more conflict arises, it will means that will be verbal attacks. Each will try to verbally attack the other party. Then what happens if the conflict increases more? Each party will try to give threats to the other party. I'll do this, I'll do that. And then also if the conflict arises, it leads to physical attack, aggressive physical. They try to hit each other. They enter into this physical fighting with each other. And finally, when the conflict is annihilatory stage, is in the unmanageable conflict stage, efforts is done by one party to completely destroy the other party. So in this way, if we understand the conflict intensity continuum, we can understand the range of the conflict. Okay, it is very important because it's most difficult to deal with the conflict when it is at the higher stage, that is unmanageable conflict, and it is easier to handle the conflict when it is in the minor stage or lower part of the continuum. This is the stage 4. Now coming to the stage 5 is the outcomes. What are the outcome of this behavior, conflict behavior? What is outcomes? Outcomes means the action reaction between the conflict parties. The action and reaction which causes this behavior, which I've studied in the previous stage, will lead to two kind of outcomes. One is a functional outcome and other is a dysfunctional outcome. Functional outcome is a positive outcome and it will lead to increased productivity of the organization. It will increase the organization of the group's performance. And dysfunctional outcome is a negative outcome or detrimental outcome. This will hinder or hamper the growth and performance of the group or organization. Let us discuss both the outcomes. Now let us discuss the first positive outcome, that is conflict is functional outcome from conflict. Here the conflict is constructive when it is helps in the improvement of the group's performance. When the conflict results in the improvement of the group's performance, then we can say the conflict is functional in nature. What happens in this functional nature? It increases the group's performance. It improves the quality of decision. It stimulates creativity and innovation. Okay. Apart from this, it creates an environment of evaluation and change. Both parties are curious about one another and they want to solve a problem. They don't want to be part of the problem. They want to get a solution to a problem. So this will create a very positive atmosphere of evaluation and change, this functional conflict. So this is constructive in nature and it will lead to the improvement of the group's overall performance. This is known as positive outcome or the functional outcome from conflict. Another thing is dysfunctional outcome from conflict. When we say dysfunctional outcome from conflict, here the conflict is destructive in nature because it hinders the group's performance. The group's overall performance, organization's overall performance is destructive, is detrimental. Why? Because it leads to development of discontent between the conflicting parties. It leads to reduced group effectiveness. The groups are no more effective because the groups are involved in regular infighting. There is retarded communication. The communication decreases. In fact, the communication decreases at such a level that there is no communication at all. So this is also a problem. And at an extreme levels, conflict can bring the whole group to a complete halt. The group may not function because of this dysfunction conflict. Okay, there will be infighting among the groups. The group's individual goals will be overcoming the group goals. Okay, and there will be the group cohesiveness will also reduce due to this dysfunctional conflict. And finally, if it is not handled, this dysfunctional outcome from conflict, if it is not properly handled, it will also threaten the group survival. Okay, if there is too much dysfunctional conflict in an organization, it will lead to the dissolution of the group. Okay, so these are the two outcomes of a conflict. So in this way, the conflict process has 5 stages. All the stages has been explained. I hope you will understand this. Thank you for your attention. I will be sending the notes through digitally. If you have any doubts, please contact me. And no need to panic. Stay at home. Be prepared. Thank you.